notice that the government never seems to have the budget for things Americans really need? Free public college? Whoa, buddy, that would really increase the deficit. Universal health care? Nah, too expensive. In fact, every time a progressive candidate like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez brings up Medicare-For-All, all we ever hear from opponents are disingenuous questions like, what about the deficit and how would we pay for that? But they also tend to be the very people who have no problem spending a fortune in taxpayer money to make their donors happy. So let's explore these politicians' scamazon wish lists to really understand the priorities of our elected officials. In fact, let's start with Republican Representative Greg Walden from Oregon. Walden isn't a fan of universal health care. It might be because he's literally the #1 recipient of campaign donations from the private healthcare industry. No, I'm not kidding, he seriously is. According to OpenSecrets.org, he's already received $407,200 from big pharma and health insurers in 2018 alone. And as a result, he's a pro at pretending like he's concerned about how we'd pay for a single-payer healthcare system.
Energy behind it, led by people like Bernie Sanders and others, that there are a lot of folks who just soon have the government take care of this, whoever the government is. But by the way, our other healthcare programs are suffering, and funding them is a problem, and.
Yeah, funding them is a problem because Republicans keep using tax revenue on nonsense, and I'll give you some examples. Now, Walden is so against the government having any control over healthcare that he was one of the most outspoken critics of the Affordable Care Act before it was even passed back in 2009.
This bill that Nancy Pelosi's putting forward to take over healthcare kills jobs, hurts small business, and hurts this country.
So what's on Walden's scamazon wish list? $20 billion in fossil fuel subsidies, which is what researchers at Oil Change International estimate the federal government spends each year. Representative Walden doesn't think the federal government can afford universal health care, but he constantly votes against getting rid of the government subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. I guess when you're receiving $238,400 in campaign donations from the oil industry and gas companies in 2008 alone, money talks. House Speaker Paul Ryan, who happens to be the second largest recipient in donations from the healthcare industry, is also very much against Medicare-For-All. In fact, he's been trying to cut funding from the Medicare program that we have now.
Paul Ryan wants to go after reductions in Medicare, Medicaid. He's also in the past supported partial privatization and higher retirement age for Social Security.
While Paul Ryan thinks it's a good idea to cut funding for Medicare, which provides health care to the elderly and disabled, he has no problem fulfilling orders in his scamazon wish list, which of course includes tax cuts for the wealthy. Ryan accomplished his tax cut goals under the Trump administration. The price tag? Only an additional $1.9 trillion in the deficits in the next decade. Oh yeah, and remember when Ryan pretended to care about balancing the budget?
Do you consider it possible to arrive at a fiscal policy and plan that reduces the deficit without touching Medicare and Social Security or military spending?
No, you can't. It's just a mathematical impossibility.
Then why did you cut the federal revenue by giving the wealthy a gigantic tax cut? Could it be because you're the #1 recipient of campaign money from hedge funds, in addition to private equity and investment firms? Finally, Senator Ted Cruz. He also thinks Medicare-For-All is too expensive and just can't be done. He did an entire debate against Bernie Sanders on the topic last year.
Ted, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is every American entitled, and I underlined that word, to health care as a right of being an American? Yes or no?
You know, I'm glad you asked that. You know, right is a word you use a lot. You know what the Declaration of Independence said? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You didn't answer the question, although I interpret your question to be that LaRonda does not have a right.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is
I heard the Bill of Rights. I got the Bill of Rights.
Health care is a right.
She has access, but she doesn't have enough money.
Your doctor
Look,
is a right.
LaRonda, you have access right now. Go out and get a really great health insurance program. Oh, you can't do it because you can't afford it.
Yeah, thanks for the history lesson, Cruz. What's on Cruz's scamazon wish list? I mean, other than getting constantly humiliated by Trump insulting his wife and father, Defense spending. Back in 2016, he proposed a massive increase in military spending that would cost an additional $140 billion a year. Yeah, that's a lot of money, right? Cruz wanted 50,000 more Army soldiers, 75 new Navy warships, and nearly 500 additional Air Force planes. His proposal was so outrageously expensive and unnecessary that Benjamin Friedman from the libertarian Cato Institute said Cruz's plan certainly doesn't seem particularly informed by political realities. Again, that was from the Cato Institute. Not to worry, though. Cruz ended up getting what he wanted 2 years later. Trump just signed the National Defense Authorization Act to the tune of $717 billion. That's for 1 year. The last time Obama signed the NDAA for 2016, the military budget was $580 billion. Just remember that these increases in military spending are less about keeping you safe and more about fattening the profits for private contractors like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. Yeah. And even if we gave the government the benefit of the doubt and bought into the lies that this defense spending was to keep us safe, what good does it do when we're dying because of unaffordable health care in our own country? Just something to think about. And even Trump understood the importance of protecting spending on government-run health care programs.
Every Republican wants to do a big number on Social Security. They want to do it on Medicare. They want to do it on Medicaid. And we can't do that. And it's not fair to the people that have been paying in for years.
The #1 priority for our lawmakers should be to make sure Americans live happy, healthy, and prosperous lives. If we're the richest country in the world, we shouldn't be the only developed country that doesn't offer universal health care. The only reason why universal health care isn't at the top of every lawmaker's wish list is because they're paid by their donors to prevent it from becoming their priority. You never have to miss another episode of No Filter by ringing the bell below. You'll get notified whenever we publish something new. And don't forget to join TYT and download the TYT Plus app today. Download our TYT Plus app on your iPhone or head over to tyt.com/join.